Hey there friends, I've got a lot of things that I'm going to share with you today that will tick off people on the far left. More specifically, facts, Ukraine, and Joe Biden. First guys, go check out my friends TriStar Trading at tristartrading.com. These people are my brand new merch partners. You'll find all of my cool designs over there, the ones that you're most familiar with. They are carrying those, but they're carrying them in a much softer shirt and certainly a much more higher quality. Not only will you recognize my designs, but they have other designs there as well. Again, from other influencers and partners, but also some of their own. They have great merchandise. They have tons of other stuff that you can get. Check out the link in my description down below. Go follow it there. Check out my latest designs out there, again, with TriStar Trading. Go to tristartrading.com or just go to the link in the comment section down below, and it'll take you directly there, and you'll be able to check out the really cool new Legally Armed America swag by TriStar Trading. You guys remember this flurry of exchanges regarding Hunter Biden being pardoned by Joe Biden, right?
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
The president would not pardon or commute sentences for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
His son, Hunter, is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law.
Was your son able to get a fair trial? Do you believe the Justice Department operated independently of politics?
I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know. And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Well, guess what happened? You all know already. Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. But he kind of had to, but he screwed up along the way. And I'm going to actually explain a lot of that to you today. Why he had to do what he did when he did it, and why it probably was a wrong thing to do in the long run. But whether his handlers were thinking straight or not, this was kind of the move he had to make at this time. Now, we're going to refer back to the pardon document, but let's read through it real quick. We know most of the other stuff on here already, but the things that matter is a full and unconditional pardon for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from, this is the big deal, from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st of 2024, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, including any that have resulted in convictions. Now, it's important that we not only understand and recognize these dates of January 1st, 2014 to December 1st, 2024, but we also look at the actual wording that say which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in. Taken part in is a pretty big blanket statement, right? I mean, because committed, convicted, all those things are pretty specific. But when you say or taken part in, that means there doesn't have to be any real proof. But if it's assumed that he had taken part in something, that, yeah, he's going to be pardoned from those things as well. And of course, this part where it says including any that have resulted in convictions. That's important because obviously that's going to reference the two that he has been convicted of, but the prior part of that sentence is going to cover anything that they have not busted him for yet. It's really important that we understand that this window of opportunity goes well beyond and past any of those crimes that he's already been convicted of, which means that the Biden administration is identifying actual crimes that Hunter hasn't been charged with yet, that we all assumed were crimes, and that they assume will come up later on. Because again, if there were no crimes there, why go back so far in order to cover something that may or may not be a crime? If it's not a crime, then, I mean, don't they have full faith in the justice system? Again, I'm being facetious whenever I say that. But they bastardized the judicial system already, so they know what can be done with it. But they certainly know that Biden is guilty. I'm talking about Hunter Biden is guilty of things dating all the way back to 2014. Now, I want to talk real quick, before I get into the specifics of Joe Biden and pardoning Hunter Biden and why he did what he did, as far as covering other things. He had to wait until after the election. Joe Biden did. He could not pardon Hunter Biden before the election because it would have been even more of a landslide. Do you follow what I'm saying? There's no way the American people, especially those who are on the fence about the judicial system having been weaponized by the Biden DOJ, there's no way people would have been okay with that if they were sitting on the fence and not sure about that, if he had pardoned his son prior to that. So there was no way that was going to happen before then, right? It just wasn't going to happen. Why now and not January the 20th or the 19th or the week leading up to Biden leaving the White House? The guy might be dead by then. Yeah, let's just be honest here. There are likely some other things too, but he may not be around anymore. If this guy kicks the bucket before January 20th and Kamala Harris is installed as president for that short period of time, which, by the way, there is no threat of her remaining as president. That's a rumor that's been floated out there. Oh, what if, he steps down and appoints Kamala Harris as president? Can she stay on? No, she can't stay on. It's not possible. She already lost an election anyway. So, the transition of power would still take place to Donald Trump. But I don't think Kamala Harris would pardon Hunter Biden. Kamala Harris should retire from politics. She's very unlikable. Nobody gives a rip about her. Her own Democratic Party doesn't like her. So her chances of running again and getting any full support from the Democratic Party is very slim. But she's stupid. I mean, this is a stupid woman. She's going to find somebody that will get in her corner and convince her the American people liked her. She's too stupid to realize that millions of people voted against Donald Trump, not necessarily for her. So that's why this had to happen now. That's why there was a slight delay. You may be thinking, why didn't he do it a long time ago? Or why didn't he wait till right before Trump took over? And those are the two reasons why. The election and death. So those things are very possible to happen, at least the death part is. A lot of things to look at here. I want to take you through the weirdness that exists between the United States and Ukraine, and of course, the Biden crime family. Our very own United States House Committee on Ways and Means even published some information on this whenever they investigated Hunter Biden. Whistleblower Doc Show Burisma hired Hunter Biden for his, quote, political weight and carefully navigated his appointment to protect Joe Biden. This was our country that conducted this investigation and pointed this out. They go on to list some of the timeline issues that took place, and I'm going to go over a couple of them with you real quick. April 15th of 2014, Devin Archer meets with Vice President Biden at the White House. Biden was, in fact, the vice president at that time. He was in office. April 16th, 2014, one day later, Hunter Biden has coffee with Greg Schultz, senior advisor to Vice President Biden. Later that same day, Hunter Biden meets with Devin Archer at the White House. This is the same person who had met with Joe Biden the day prior to that. The very next day, a Burisma executive emails Devin Archer, this is the guy who met with Hunter and with Joe Biden, as it relates to Hunter Biden, stating, and I quote, "I do believe we have to reach a reasonable balance here and acknowledge they were relying on Hunter Biden's influence with his father and would take into account how to use the, quote, political weight of our directors carefully and strategically." I want to remind you, this came from the United States House Committee on Ways and Means. This is not a newspaper report. This is not somebody else dreaming this up and putting a rumor out there. This is somebody using actual documents and things that they took forensically, whether it be emails, text messages, or conversations, and built this timeline based on what actually happened that they have proof of. They went on to state, the email went on to say that they would list Hunter Biden on their website, quote, after his father left our country, and underlined how Burisma could not, quote, hide our directors. In other words, they had to state that Hunter Biden I'm speaking of, was one of their board members. Now, it's very important that you understand what they say at the top here after his father left our country, because Joe Biden made 3 trips to Ukraine in 2014 in a very short period of time, which is very, very unusual for a country that wasn't in a weird way at that time. In other words, right now you've got all this action between Russia and Ukraine, so you would almost understand a little bit more of a focus on the country of Ukraine. But that was not happening back then. This was during the Obama administration. That had not taken place. Now remember, Obama let Russia take Crimea, but there was no war at the time. There was no war over Russia taking Crimea. So very important that you understand, we had no business in Ukraine at the time, yet Joe Biden made 3 visits. April 21st, which was a few days after that, Joe Biden travels to Ukraine. 3 weeks later, Hunter Biden appointed to Burisma's board of directors. A day later, according to emails obtained from the Hunter Biden laptop, Eric Schwerin, another Hunter Biden business associate, directed a photo of Joe Biden and Devon Archer that was taken at the April 15th White House meeting be removed from the Burisma website at the request of the Vice President's General Counsel. His own attorneys were telling him, get this picture off of that website because it clearly incriminated Joe Biden and made this look like a power struggle where they were using Hunter to, in effect, use Joe Biden's power, if you want to call it that, as Vice President of the United States to do whatever they wanted to do within the borders of Ukraine. Vice President Joe Biden travels again to Ukraine to attend the inauguration of Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. And skip down to November 20, 2014, then Vice President Joe Biden once again visits Ukraine for the 3rd time. This was the 3rd visit in 7 months. Think about that. In a 7-month span of time, a little over half a year, Joe Biden visited Ukraine 3 times in a country that we had no business being in. Now, that's not all that your tax dollars uncovered. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability wrote a report, The Biden's Influence Peddling Timeline. This report outlined a total of $21 million that were funneled from Ukraine to the Biden family. Proof of this, again, not supposition, not a rumor. They had hard evidence. They had account records. They had emails. They had text messages. They had testimonials of $21 million that funneled its way from Ukraine through various other methods and wound up in a bank account with somebody with the last name of Biden. Now, more specifically, I want to show you a quick timeline of partially what I just pointed out. April 15, 2014, Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, appoints Biden business associate to the board of directors. Again, this was not Hunter Biden. This was one of his friends. They appointed him on the 15th to that, okay? So it was no less than 7 days later that Vice President Biden traveled to Ukraine and gave an anti-corruption speech. Can you wrap your head around any Biden, take a pick, any Biden, but Joe Biden going anywhere? I don't care if it was to a kindergarten class. I don't care if it was to an underground Dungeons and Dragons tournament. Going anywhere and schooling anyone on the dangers or the problems with corruption. Understanding he certainly knows what he's talking about. But for this guy to scold anyone on the negatives of corruption has got to be one of the greatest things to ever experience for anybody who was in that audience who actually knew, I'm looking at one of the most corrupt people in American history. School me on corruption. That's golden, man. And 3 weeks later, Burisma announces Hunter Biden joined its board of directors. Again, after Joe Biden spent at least one of his trips there. Now, I singled out Ukraine, but there's also some very deep Russia ties too. It almost appears that the Biden family back then in this 2014 time period was willing to accept whatever from the highest bidder, Russia or Ukraine, right? We obviously destabilized Ukraine from that process forward and made them our ally and pushed Russia away. But you'll remember Hillary Clinton saying that she was going to do this reset with Russia. And then they turned around and started saying Russia, 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 like Russia had influenced the election in Trump's favor. The Clintons were the ones who were in favor of Russia. Again, they pointed all that out. So if you look at this timeline, again, I sorted this out based on Russia or Ukraine, so I don't have them all together. But it's very obvious that the Biden family was receiving money from both Ukraine and from Russia at this very same time. So in my opinion, and I believe this is also the opinion of a lot of other people, especially in the United States government who were doing this investigation, we realize that who's writing the biggest check? Who's putting the most amount of zeros at the end of this check? Because that's clearly who the Biden family or the Biden crime syndicate partnered up with. In this case, Ukraine won out and Russia was the odd man out. So Russia got pushed aside. No more favors for Russia. However, Ukraine became more destabilized because now the CIA and us, the United States, were pretty much calling all the shots in Ukraine. And now you had the Biden family with a sitting vice president of the United States equally in control of things behind the scene in a somewhat small country, but a very, very corrupt country. The corruption in Ukraine is not new. Ukraine has been a super corrupt country for many, many years now. We just made it 100 times more corrupt by us getting involved with the Biden family and our own country getting embedded in there and really destabilizing the whole area, but more specifically with Ukraine. Now, before I get too much in the timeline that I've built, because I've got a pretty cool timeline that will show you some things regarding Ukraine and the timing of the pardon, a lot of you have asked, okay, based on this pardon and how the document is worded and the dates involved, it doesn't cover anything with Ukraine. It simply covers the illegal gun purchase, if you're talking about the 4473 that Hunter Biden fudged on, and of course the tax evasion. Those are the two things that he got charged with and convicted of. Nothing to do with Ukraine, even though the date does go back to that. Can somebody be pardoned for a crime they either haven't committed yet or that they haven't been charged or convicted on? Yes is the answer. A president can pardon someone for crimes they haven't actually been charged with yet. The Constitution gives the president the power to pardon someone before they are indicted, convicted, or sentenced for a federal offense against the United States. Now, it's important, real quick, that we talk about federal offense. Remember, these were federal charges and federal convictions that happened in the federal court system. So if anybody finds anything on Hunter Biden from that January 1 of 2014 to December 1 of 2024 and wants to charge Hunter Biden for it, they can charge Hunter Biden, but no federal crimes or charges can be charged against Hunter Biden during that window. Now back to whether or not a person can be pardoned for those crimes that they haven't been charged or convicted with. A person can be pardoned for crimes they haven't actually been charged with. However, a pardon cannot apply to future conduct, only past offenses. And that's a little bit suspect if you ask me, because if you'll remember again, the pardon is through December 1st of 2024. That's on Sunday when this was announced, which means that this was all written up prior to the pardon date of December 1st of 2024. So when this paperwork was being drawn up, Hunter Biden could have gone out there and committed a crime. I guess we'll only know based on when this was submitted to basically be put on a hold until it's released to the public. But if Hunter Biden did something on December 1st or on November 30th, I believe in my very simple mind that this pardon would not cover him because the Constitution does not allow for a future crime to be pardoned, right? You understand what I'm saying? So it could have been one day later. The pardon date states that it was in effect, but if he had committed a crime prior to that paperwork being drawn up, or excuse me, after that paperwork being drawn up, but prior to December 1st, might be null and void. Again, just something to consider. Doubtful that if this will ever come up, but we are playing with splitting hairs with this. And again, there's reasons why these dates are so very important right now. Now, speaking of those dates, I want to give you a little bit of backstory real quick so you understand what we're talking about. I'm going to show you the timeline. This is from the federal government's own website, the DOJ website. Robert Hunter Biden convicted on 3 felony tax offenses, 6 misdemeanor tax offenses. You'll notice they go back. This is a span of many years, right? It goes back to 2015 and goes as far as 2016. So if you look at the third bullet down in 2018, stopped paying his outstanding and overdue taxes for tax year 2015. So technically 2016 was his first year of violating, simply because that's when the taxes were due. Just because it pertains to 2015 doesn't mean that it needed to be in 2015. It means that he was committing his crime in 2016 because, again, your taxes technically are not due to the IRS, which is an unconstitutional thing, by the way, but until the following year. So that's why you're going to see me using the date of 2016 and not going back to 2015. But again, that's when the tax problem began. So 2016 is our earliest year that you would think a pardon would need to go back to, because there were no tax violations before 2016. Remember, this pardon went back to 2014, 2 years prior to what he was convicted of on his taxes for the year of 2016. Next up is the gun charge. Robert Hunter Biden found guilty of 3 felonies related to the legal purchase of a firearm. This happened in 2018. So those are the years, that's the window that we're looking at. So you might be wondering, well, why didn't they make the pardon effective from the date of 2016, whenever he violated the tax issue of not paying his taxes, and as far as into 2018, whenever the gun charge was up there? That'd be a good question. That's a really good question. I'm going to show you a timeline, and maybe this will help you answer that question. If you look at the Hunter Biden criminal timeline that I created, yes, this is not the prettiest of timelines because I did, in fact, create this myself, but I felt like a visual was a whole lot more effective in explaining this story. So if you look all the way to the far left, January 1st, 2014, the pardon began, right? That's the date, January 1, 2014, that Joe Biden has gone back to in order to pardon his son. You look immediately to its right, April 2014, Hunter's Burisma influence scam begins. That's whenever Archer started talking with Ukraine, involved Hunter. Devin Archer was Hunter Biden's 50-50 business partner in this company that was receiving the money from Ukraine, right? From Burisma. So that's very important. April of 2014 is whenever the crime started about influence peddling using Joe Biden by Hunter Biden to influence Ukraine. 2016, Hunter stopped paying his taxes. So you see, 2 years after he started the scam with Burisma in Ukraine is whenever the tax issue happened. And 2 years after that, Hunter lied on a federal form to buy a gun. So that's essentially, if you see the 2 flags there from 2016 to 2018, if we're talking about the pardons of the 2 crimes that Biden has already been convicted of, speaking of Hunter Biden, of course, then the window would only need to be between 2016 and 2018. Yet it ran from 2018 for 6 more years until December 1st of 2024, which is the pardon date in per the document of the pardon itself. So I want you to see this is the span of time that the pardon covers, and it did not need to, according to the convictions that had taken place with Hunter Biden. So this little thing sitting out over here in 2014 appears to be the net that was cast, and they didn't want to put too much attention and make it obvious to go back to April of 2014. So they just went back to January of 2014, so it wasn't painfully obvious. Now it has to make you wonder, over the last 6 years, what additional things, or is this simply a continuation of the existing Ukrainian corruption that Hunter Biden was involved in? What took place from 2018 until 2024 to make this pardon date be effective and ending on December 1st of 2024? Because they certainly didn't do that just for the sake of doing it. They did that because there's either the fear that Hunter is lying to them, because they're likely asking him, dude, is there more stuff we need to know about? And he's lying to them. The dude is a habitual liar just like his father. Or they really do know something is out there that he did, and they're simply trying to prepare to make sure the guy doesn't go to prison for the rest of his life. So that's why this massive, big, wide net was cast going all the way back to 2014. Now, the question that I have to ask is, or at least the comment that I have to make, if the Biden administration felt it so important to go back to 2014 so that they could include the Burisma years and the Ukraine years, is that their way, and this is a rhetorical question because I know the answer to it, is that their way of saying we know Hunter Biden committed a crime, we know the Biden crime family committed a crime, so we're including this date in there because we know it was an actual crime? Because again, if it was no crime, why did you extend the pardon date to go back that far? They are telling the American people and the court system, Hunter Biden committed crimes in 2014, and I want him to be pardoned from ever being able to be convicted of those crimes. So now those crimes from the influence peddling in 2014, he can't be charged with that. He can't be. But there lies the problem. By them pardoning Hunter Biden, you know what doesn't apply anymore? The Fifth Amendment. Hunter Biden cannot plead the Fifth. He can be subpoenaed. He can be made to go to court to testify against Joe Biden's brother, which, by the way, you will, no doubt in my mind, see a pardon for Jim Biden over the next week or so. Same reasons and the same timeline. But if Joe Biden is investigated at some point for his involvement in this scandal, you can still subpoena Hunter Biden. The pardon doesn't apply to testifying. The pardon applies to him going to prison or him being charged or him being convicted on any of that influence peddling. However, if there is no threat of him incriminating himself, that's the whole point of the Fifth Amendment, avoiding or at least a possibility of self-incrimination. If there is no danger of self-incrimination because Biden cannot go to prison, then there's no reason that he would be able to plead the Fifth. So the Fifth would not apply. He could plead the Fifth if he wanted to, but they're going to tell him, no, you can't do that. You can say those words, but you have to speak now. So he will be in contempt of court if he pleads the Fifth because it protects him from nothing, because there is no danger of him going to jail because he can incriminate himself. It doesn't matter. If he comes right out and says, this is what I did and these are all the people involved, he still can't go to prison, even if they got him dead to rights on that. But Joe Biden can, and a lot of the other people involved in that influence peddling, they can go to prison. So while Hunter Biden may be the one in the clear in all this because of this pardon, and again, I do think Jim Biden any day now, the same thing will apply to him. He may be in the clear, Hunter Biden might, but he could surely incriminate a whole lot of other people because he may be going into this thinking, I'm safe and everybody else is safe. Everybody else is not safe. Unless Joe Biden pardons everybody else, then everybody else can have an issue with Hunter Biden coming in and ratting them out. Now, another question, that's kind of a strange question, but it's a legitimate one. Can Joe Biden pardon himself? Yes, he actually can. There's no precedent really involved in this, but based on the documents of the Founding Fathers, Joe Biden could theoretically pardon himself. I personally don't think that he will, because with his age, he's likely to kick the bucket any day now. And look, let's be honest here. If Joe Biden somehow or another were charged and convicted based on what Hunter Biden and Jim Biden did, are they really going to send this old man to jail? I mean, look at him now. He's still, he's drooling. He's crapping in his diaper. They're not going to send this guy to prison. It's just not going to happen. It would be a hit on his, quote, legacy, but he's never going to spend a moment in jail just based on his mental incapacities. The guy can't even manage and control basic bodily functions, right? So there's no way they're going to put him in prison. So I don't think he will pardon himself based on that knowledge, knowing that, nothing's ever really going to happen here. Now, a couple of quick points that I want to point out. By them subpoenaing Hunter Biden, making him go to court, one of the big questions is, who was the big guy? Remember, they've got all this documentation where Hunter refers to 10% for the big guy. I want you to clear your mind for a second and really listen to what I'm about to say. If Hunter Biden is referring to the big guy, and we still don't know who the big guy is, you kind of know who the big guy is, right? Wouldn't it have been easier for Hunter Biden if the big guy was not Joe Biden to just say who the big guy was, right? I mean, that would have given them a name that they could have followed up on and gotten off the trail of thinking that the big guy was Joe Biden. Now, we know the big guy was Joe Biden. But if it wasn't for some reason, if some strange reason it wasn't Joe Biden and it was somebody else, wouldn't it have been easier for everybody to have the Biden crime family simply pay that person off, knowing they would get a pardon, right? And just let them walk free and keep all their money. He might get a cushy appointment as an ambassador in another country. So if there was another guy who was the big guy, we would know by now, because there's too many protections out there that the Biden family could have offered that person. So we know that big guy was Joe Biden. So this is the same concept of OJ's killer, right? And I'm not trying to make fun here. I'm being very honest. When OJ was acquitted for murdering two people that we all know he murdered, he got off on that. And guess what? Nobody kept looking for the killer. Why? Because they knew who the killer was. The killer just got off. Why keep looking for him? If that court system, and anybody else for that matter, whether it be a bounty hunter or somebody else, thought even remotely that somebody else might have killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Goldman, if they thought just slightly there was a chance, they would have gone and looked after them and investigated and tried to find who that true killer was. Nobody looked. They all knew. Same here. Nobody's asking who the big guy is because everybody knows who the big guy is. Why investigate that any further? We may not have proof of who it is, but we know who it is. Friends, the United States is who controls Ukraine. It's not a surprise to me right now that all this money, remember Blinken has said every expendable amount of cash that he can scrounge up is going to go to Ukraine between now and January 20th when Donald Trump takes over. These people are trying to dig up as much money to send to Ukraine right now while people here in the United States still suffer and also suffer as a result of these natural disasters. These people are so embedded with Ukraine and they realize how corrupt Ukrainians are that I think they realize that we're going to lose control of the White House. We may lose control of Ukraine because now they're not going to be sending sugar daddies bribe money to Ukraine anymore. Now this cesspool of Ukraine, where all this money laundering has happened for decades and more now than ever, all that is going to dry up. Ukraine may end up being the highest bidder for somebody else. You don't think Ukraine will spill the beans at that point? You don't think Ukraine will talk about who is involved with them? If there's no allegiance to the Biden family, which in a couple of months, there will be no allegiance to the Biden family. The Biden family will have no more power. There's no dynasty of the Biden family, right? I mean, Hunter Biden is the next person in the Biden family that has a Biden name that could do something else, like the Bush family, right? George Bush, George H.W., then Jeb. They were trying to create a dynasty. The Kennedys. There's no Biden dynasty. So once Joe Biden walks out of the White House on January 20th, the Biden family has zero power. Zero. In fact, less than they had before Joe Biden went in there because there was a certain level of respect to the Biden name at that point. Not much, not in my eyes, but a certain level. It's gone now. So the Ukrainians will have zero allegiance. Right now, they do. Ukrainians are really quiet. You notice how quiet they are? They're not talking about any of the negative stuff. They're not talking about Joe Biden losing, or Kamala Harris losing the election. Not talking about any of that. They're being really quiet. Look for the Ukrainians to start to get awfully mouthy after January 20th and start to chum up with people that they usually would not have been partners with. I want to repeat this. The United States is who has destabilized Ukraine. I'm not saying Ukraine doesn't have any fault. Certainly not stating that. But we, and more specifically the Biden family, have given the Ukraine false hope in thinking that they will forever be covered by everybody here. And now that false hope is going away and dwindling. And you are going to see things happen after Donald Trump takes office. You'll see things take place over in Europe that you were not expecting, because it will not be same old business as usual. Things will change dramatically after the first of the year. But I mainly wanted you guys to see this timeline regarding this pardon, and I wanted you to understand it was never necessary for Joe Biden, to pardon Hunter for this 10-year span, this massive 10-year window, when his crime spree, if you want to call it that he was convicted of, was only a 2-year window. So they threw this 10-year net over and beyond a 2-year window to make sure they could cover the real crimes that he has not been convicted of yet.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's over.